This is Bringing the Darkness to the Light with Catherine Nadal, professional psychic medium.
Tonight's guest is Jake Faun. Jake hailed from the UK as a guitarist who's now living in California. He has recorded and performed as a touring musician for a variety of iconic bands and artists, including David Lee Roth, Winger, Bullet Boys, XYZ, Selena Gomez, D.N.C.E., Alec Benjamin, Willie Jones, Gracin, and many more. Jake is also well-versed in all genres of music, but specializes in rock and country. His YouTube channel has reached over 10,000 subscribers, where he uploads his own original guitar instrumentals and covers. He also teaches privately and online to all ages and abilities. It's a pleasure to have you on, Jake.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, wow. Yeah, this is so special for me to have you on. First of all, you're friends with a few of my friends, but the bands that you have played in, are some of my favorites. First of all, we were just chatting before the interview started. I was recently at M3. I got to see David Lee Roth, which to me, my goal was always to see the real Van Halen. I never got to see them. To see David like that and still moving around and singing incredibly. I was starstruck, literally. I really was.
Well, you and me both, as a guitar player, there are a few bands on the planet who have a more iconic, guitarist in their band. So, I remember when I was 14 years old and I bought, this was back when people had CDs. I'm now at the age where I can start to say things that make me feel old. But yeah, I remember buying that first CD where, it had the picture of the four members on the cover, and just someone I think told me that it was a cool band if you're into guitar, and and obviously found Van Halen after that, and had to then go and learn all of the main songs and riffs. But even at this time, which I guess would have been the early 2000s, for the 14-year-old version of me to someone who has sold me like, oh, in 20 years time or so you're going to get the chance to play with David Lee Roth himself, that would have been something I never could have imagined, just because of we're obviously different ages, and when I was younger, I was from England, obviously, so I never thought in a million years I'd be in America at one point playing on stage with David himself, playing these Van Halen songs. So yeah, it was definitely quite an experience to sort of have a run with him. So I was very lucky to do that. Still to this day, I'm kind of looking back thinking, why me? How did that happen? But it was a great gig. So, and David's great. So.
I recently had Steve Rosen on my show, and he wrote a book called Tone Chaser, and he had a 26-year friendship with Eddie Van Halen. And that was my second time interviewing him. I had spoken to him last year. And this year, because his book actually has an Audible feature, you can actually listen to the whole book, he gave me 6 clips, and I plugged them into my interview. And to hear Eddie tell this story about the album cover in particular, because you just mentioned it, and I'm tying it in because the way Eddie tells this story is like David does this big jump and he's wearing these Capezios, which were not very thick, soled shoes. And it came down and apparently broke his foot or his ankle or something. And they did a before and after. So the photographer actually caught him in air doing his leap. And then when he landed, the broken foot, the inside cover of that album had a picture of like David with like a cast on his leg or his foot or whatever, So to hear Eddie actually tell that, to me, it was just incredible. So having heard that recently and then standing there watching David on stage, I just kept hearing Eddie in my head, like, oh my gosh, because some of the things that the young David Lee Roth used to do was just unbelievable. Gymnastic.
Yeah, well, David, he was always known, I guess, crazy, wild frontman, but he's a very active person. And you can see it in the music videos. He's doing his jumps and kicks, and then even later when he went solo, you'd see videos of him like during his solo career, like climbing mountains. He lived in Japan for a while, and he's studied, was it martial arts of some sort? Maybe he might even got a black belt, I think. So he's an EMT. He was a first responder for a while. So David's had this very kind of eclectic lifestyle, which I guess if you're a fan, you know about. But if you don't know this stuff, you might not realize, this guy who looks the way he does all these things. And obviously the health fitness side is a big part of that for him. And even when I was with him, he's still doing all of his leg kicks on stage, spinning the microphone stand round. His performance is incredible for, for a guy that age, because a lot of these bands unfortunately are getting to a point where they're retiring or too old, and many of them just died because of the lifestyle. But David is one of the guys, I guess, who managed to sort of keep it on track and keep going and still be himself. So he is something to see, I guess. So yeah.
Yes. Well, thank you for sharing your experience with David, because you have an upfront and personal point of view. Going back to what you said, though, about, being a young boy and being like around 14, is that when you realized that you really wanted to get involved in music or play guitar? When did this all start for you?
It's a good question. I suppose it wasn't really like I don't know if it was a defining moment, but I think I started playing when I was about 11 or 12 years old. I remember me and a friend of mine were at school, and I went to his house on the weekend, and we watched the music channel that was on TV at the time called Kerrang. I don't know if that exists out here or if people know about it, but it's one of the music channels we used to have in England, and it's kind of one of the rock alternative channels. And I remember just seeing the video for, I think, Sweet Child of Mine by Guns N' Roses just come on. And at this point, I was kind of into music, but not really. Like, I just enjoyed passively listening to it, whatever. And I've always been kind of not mainstream with what is current at the time. So when I was like 14 years old, I'm listening to Van Halen, the Def Leppard, and Bon Jovi, when the rest of the people my age are listening to whatever's on the radio, which is what normal people do. So I remember I just saw the video for Sweet Child of Mine. I think my friend and I, we looked at each other and thought, that's kind of cool. Slash playing guitar with a top hat and big guitar solo. And then about a week later, I went back to his house, another, week of school, went home to hang out on the weekend, and I saw that he had a guitar in the corner of his room, this electric guitar and a small amplifier. And I was like, what is that? Like, where did you get that from? And he goes, oh yeah, I just rented it just like the other day. So I was like, can I have a go on it? And picked it up and had no idea what I was doing, but just hitting the strings, hearing the sound of this distorted kind of thing that sounded like the sound that I was hearing on TV, but obviously had no musical sound coming out yet. It just sounded cool. This guitar, the way the strings resonated and distortion and feedback. So I sat there and kind of pushed down a few frets to try and see if I could make any noise that sounded coherent, and probably didn't. But immediately I went home and I was like, Mum, I need to play guitar. So I told her, like, I want to rent a guitar. What can I do? And I think she was just happy that I was taking interest in something at that age, because being a 12-year-old just becoming a teenager, everything sucks. I don't want to do this. I don't want to go to school. I don't want to learn that. So the fact that I said I want to learn a musical instrument, I think she was like, great, we will happily go and rent you a guitar for £10 a month. A basic, little Yamaha Pacifica. I still have it. It's a great guitar. Started having lessons for a couple of years privately, and then when I finished a few private lessons, started going through school, choosing more music-based subjects, because I guess back in England, we have things that are slightly different to America as far as how we do it. But yeah, from about the age of sort of 16 to 18, I started getting more serious about it. And again, hadn't really thought properly about this is actually a viable career, because we're told so much music or acting or anything of these kind of entertainment style jobs are so unrealistic to actually make a living from, and they're so difficult and competitive. We're not worth doing. You got to get a job, you got to study something real. So, but I never really wanted to do that. Obviously, probably as looking back now a bit older, I'm like, yeah, I can see why people say don't do this for a career and choose a smart thing and be sensible and all that. But yeah, I just really took to guitar, and then around the age of 18 was probably I was thinking I would actually like to take this further. So I started studying music at college, and then I went to university to study music, and then I left university at 21. And by that point, I was all in. Again, I didn't really have much of a plan. I was teaching in a music school that had just opened, so I did that. And I also had like a wedding band, and I did that for a few years. I used to run that and book weddings and gigs, and that was kind of my introduction to sort of being, if you could call it a professional musician. And then it wasn't until a few years later that I kind of got the idea to come to America and try this side out. But yeah, that was kind of what got me into it. So it was a gradual process, I guess, of just really enjoying the guitar and the process. And I never really had to struggle, if that makes sense. Like, I enjoyed practicing when I was young. I could sit down for 3 hours and just sit there and play because I just enjoyed it so much. And I assumed everyone was like this. I thought that those who like to play instruments, we all just enjoy playing them. It wasn't until I started teaching, especially teaching young kids, I was like, oh, actually, this is quite difficult, and not everyone loves the way it feels and sounds straight away. So some people have to take more time with it. But yeah, I guess it was through my teens I kind of just really got more into it, and again, didn't really think about a viable career path at that point. I just liked playing music and thought I can't not see myself doing this, and then just followed wherever it took me, and I guess it's taken me here, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, that's kind of how it happened for me, just probably from Guns N' Roses. So I have to thank Slash for that. If I ever meet him one day, I'll have to tell him that story, and hopefully he'll I don't know, give me his top hat or something.
Absolutely. Tell me about coming to America, or did you go straight to California?
Yeah, well, it was a long process, so I'll try and give you the sort of the condensed version because a lot of it's not probably that interesting. It's visas and all this kind of stuff. But I first came to America. It wasn't the very first time was to go to Boston to my friend, my best friend Nolan Lambrosa, who actually is the reason I came out here as well. But when we were like 14 years old in school, um, his family had dual nationality, so we went to school together as kids, but his family had always come from America, so they would often go back for the summer holidays to America to spend time at their home. So the first time I came, I think was around 14 years old, 15, no, maybe it was 16, I can't remember. I was a teenager, to Martha's Vineyard, which is a really nice place. So that was a great first experience, and it was just a holiday for a couple of weeks, and that was that. And then maybe about 5 years ago later, I had another kind of just holiday to, where did we go? Florida, and then kind of another trip. I'd been to Nashville. Always, this was just like holidays, nothing kind of musical involved at this point. But it wasn't until probably at the age of 25, maybe, I think it would have been, where my friend Nolan, the one who I initially came to America for the first time with, after we went to school, I went to university, and his family moved back to America. So we kind of lost touch for, well, at least 5 or 6 years or so. And then one day he said, "Oh, I'm actually going to be in England next week, let's say, and sometime in 2025." He's like, "I'm doing some work in London. Let's hang out, let's meet up, catch up," kind of thing. So I went to meet him one night, and then he kind of told me what he was doing. And he's like, "Yeah, I'm living in LA now. I'm a songwriter producer. Things are going cool out there. You have to come out and visit me sometime." So I was like, okay, well, I've never been to LA as a musician. That's definitely somewhere I've always been curious about. And as a fan of movies, well, obviously Hollywood is kind of where it all kind of stems from. So I remember, probably the year after, a few months later, I was like, okay, well, I'll book a 2 week trip to come and stay with him. And then I remember, I arrived in America on a tourism visa, got to his house, and I see this nice big, house with huge glass panel windows, and he's driving in his Porsche. He rolls up, shortly. So I'm like, hang on a minute, you're doing something that I've clearly not mastered back home. Like, here I am hustling, trying to do my thing, and here's my good friend, driving around in a Porsche and having a lifestyle in LA. And he shows me around town and tells me what's going on. And he works with a lot of pop artists and R&B artists and big names, like, in fact, the thing I think that put him on the map was the Nick Jonas song called Jealous, which I guess is probably like 10 years old now, maybe. He wrote that and produced it with Nick Jonas. It became a #1 hit, and then he just, that was it for him. Everything opened up, which is great. So around that time is when he invited me over. So anyway, I saw LA, I saw the lifestyle and all the kind of stuff that was going on. This was about 2015. And I thought, well, I would like to do more of this. And he said, yeah, the visa will be easy. I'll sponsor you. It'll be great. No problems. Many, many years later, the visa process wasn't so easy, but I started the process through thousands of dollars as a visa and getting all the evidence, and slowly acquired it over a couple of years. And I got my first O1 visa in 2019, it would have been. So I spent a couple of years going back and forth. I would come out on a tourism visa for a few months. I'd go back to England, and each time I would come out, I'd try and meet a few more people, go to a few more jam nights and gigs, and just try and sort of plant some seeds so that when I finally got the visa, it wouldn't be coming out with no friends or anything. I'd already have quite a few networks of people that I can sort of go, hey, I'm in town now for longer than a week, or let's hang out and do something. So I got the visa in 2019, and then I could come out and stay for longer than 3 months. So that's what I did. I came out in 2019, really threw myself into things, and it was at the end of that year, 2019, that I got the audition for David Lee Roth, which for me was like, I don't know, still, again, was wild how that happened, because I wasn't even LA for a year really before that kind of fell into my lap. But the funny thing is, like, I had, in the time that I was in LA, I was trying to get something happening as quickly as I could, because, this is an expensive city to live in, and, you have to make some money. So I remember doing like a bunch of auditions, all this kind of stuff. Nothing really went through, a couple of gigs here and there, but it was definitely like, I need to make something happen. And then I remember one day I was just, on my phone or whatever, on Instagram, and I check my requests folder, which is, where like messages, spam, and all that kind of stuff goes to. But I always check that just in case somebody I don't know messages me. And then I checked it and I saw that I had a message from this guy. It said, "Hey, I'm the bass player. My name's Ryan Wheeler. I'm the bass player and MD for David Lee Roth. I'd love to talk to you about some shows." So I was like, okay, that's not the kind of message you get from Instagram every day. So we spoke, and then he told me how they need someone to step in because their current guitar player couldn't commit to a tour. And I was only doing the rhythm guitar position. They already had a lead guitar and player in place, a guy called Al Estrada, who's an incredible player. So he was the kind of the main guy, and then they needed someone else to kind of do rhythm guitar. Fast forward, did the audition. A week later, he says, "Well, do you want to do the gig?" So right around December of that year, I got the call to do the David Lee Roth gig, which was going to kick off in 2020. And then obviously 2020 starts. That was all great. We did 6 weeks on the road, and then COVID happens and shuts everything down. So that was kind of how that all went. But yeah, I got my visa in 2019. I then renewed another visa during the lockdowns because the visa only lasts a couple of years. And then just as of about a month ago, I got my green card because that was my next sort of step. I didn't want to keep having to renew my visa because that costs money. You have to restart the process. You have to go back to your country to get a stamp on the passport. It's a whole thing. I could be a visa guide for anyone who needs to know how to get into the country the legal way. Yeah. So, but yeah, it took me a long time. I guess I started the process in 2015, and it's now, well, 9 years later, and I've just got my green card. So, yeah, I suppose that's, how long it takes to sort of get the green card. But I got it, it cost a lot of money, but I'm glad I did it because now I have, I'm here, I can work and all that kind of stuff. So that was my process, really. It was just a kind of a gradual back and forth. And again, I didn't really, when I first came out, have an intention to necessarily, this is going to be it. I'm going to move here. And I still say to people, like, I don't know if I'll stay here forever. In an ideal world, I could live in England, live in America, and, be able to travel around. But yeah, that's how it went for me, just back and forth for a few years until I got the visa and then just threw myself into it. And again, I always knew in the back of my mind, I can always go home. So if it doesn't work out here, what's the worst that can happen except for loss of money and time? So yeah.
Wow. Well, congratulations on getting a green card. Something not everyone achieves. And so welcome to America.
Good to be here.
Yes. That in itself, that's why there's another characteristic that you had said about yourself earlier, which I always love. It's like you've done a lot of self-discovery about yourself because you knew that it would make things easier for you, So everything that you did because you knew it was going to help you. You weren't putting things in your way to create barricades for yourself. You were doing everything to just widen your path. And that's incredible.
Well, I think, one of the things that sort of helped me that I wouldn't necessarily say is a good way to think about things in life, but I didn't have a backup plan. For me, it was like, it's either this or nothing. Like, obviously, and I completely get it and support it, the idea of having a job to live off while you do music or whatever your passion may be, and then gradually hopefully your passion takes over where you can do that for a living and not worry about the job. From the moment I sort of left college, I think I chose music just so I didn't have to get a real job. I think I did one summer as a stockroom, like I would pack CDs and label them in big boxes at a music store called HMV in England, which has now since closed down because no one buys CDs anymore. But I did a Christmas shift there for a few months, and I was like, I never want to do this again, so I'm going to just do music and nothing else. However, that job did pay for my first real guitar amplifier when back when I was like 18 years old or something. So I can't fault it too much. But yeah, that's the only time I ever did like what I could call of any sort of 9 to 5 normal job. Otherwise, I've just been full music forever. So I think, as I said, because I didn't have a backup plan with anything, it was either this or nothing. And I think sometimes that mindset helps you because there's no like safety net underneath you going, oh, well, at least I've got my regular income, and if that doesn't work out, I have my job. For me, it was like, no, if I've come to LA and I don't have one of the criteria for the O1 visa, which is what I was on, is that you actually can't work in any other field except for what you're here to do, which is music. So when I first came to LA, it was like, well, you've got an artist visa. This is what you're here to do, So there's no bar jobs, no Uber driving, no DoorDash, no other kind of temporary things that most people would do. I was like, I have to just do music because otherwise I'm breaking the rules of my visa. So not having a backup plan, I think, helped me just sort of be like, well, I'll do it. I can take any gig in any part of the country and I'll say yes. And if it pays terrible, well, it doesn't matter. I need to get out there. And then that able to open up some more doors to meet the right people who could give me more gigs. And still to this day, it's still a hustle. I don't think there ever gets to be a point when you're a musician where you can just relax and be like, what, I've made it, whatever that means. You always, I even talk to my friends my friend Nolan, who's a very successful producer. He still has to hustle and message artists directly. I want to work with you, and make things happen for himself. Because in our world, it's not like you have a 9 to 5 contract, you show up at your job, you do your job, you go home, you get your salary. With us, if we want to take a day off, well, I can, which is nice. But then I can, if I do that too often, then just no money comes in and people stop calling you. So you have to be very self-disciplined and motivated, which is why, when I'm not playing a show or learning something, I'm still playing guitar, writing music for myself, for YouTube, just to keep things busy, to keep my playing warmed up. Because, it's a muscle memory as well. If I stop playing for a week, my hands, I can feel it. So I guess the best way is I would be doing music if I got paid or I didn't get paid. And I think as most musicians, we're often not getting paid. That's our life. But yeah, I would be doing it no matter what happens. So I guess I'm just fortunate that I managed to somehow make it work out for my lifestyle.
Yeah.
But, not having a backup plan, I guess, is sometimes the best plan. But don't quote me on that. I don't want to give anyone bad advice.
No,
Stay in
I
school,
think
get a real job.
yeah,
earn some
well,
money.
I think it's really interesting because you just made a really good point. Like you went from David Lee Roth and touring with him for 6 weeks, and then the whole world comes to a dead stop with
That was
COVID.
weird.
And then, but that you have to keep playing, right? Because, you just said you could feel it physically. So, what was going on in COVID in your world? You started to create a YouTube channel. Like, what was your path during that time?
Yeah. Well, it was an interesting time for all of us, I'm sure. But I really used the time during COVID to sort of, like get back into YouTube, because I already had a YouTube channel running and I had a few videos I put up and I was trying to put more up. But now I was at this time where I was like, well, I'm at home. I've got no gigs to worry about. I don't have any songs to learn for other people. I don't have to be anywhere. I'll just start doing more music. So I kind of set myself a goal. I'll try and write, record, produce, edit, film a song every 2 weeks, which may feel like a long time for people, but anyone who's written a song and recorded it and edited it, mixed it, shot a video for it, edited that takes a long time. So I quite enjoyed it in that kind of aspect, but at the same time I was like, yeah, this is not great from a career perspective, because we were just stranded and no gigs are coming back. And then at that point, I think Eddie passed away in 2020 as well, which was such a shame because I never got a chance to meet him, Eddie Van Halen. And then I think at the end of the year, David kind of said that he's retiring. So the second half of our tour never really came back. Although it's good that he's now come back out of retirement to do a couple of shows here and there. And he's now actually got a whole tour coming up as well. Yeah, it was an interesting time. I think some people had it much worse than I did. I think some people had much better time than I did. But for me, I guess I tried to just sort of make the most of it,
Do you have any highlighted songs that you feel really proud of that you made during that time?
Probably. I have on YouTube, I have like a series of what I call my fast country guitar series. The first video I uploaded onto YouTube back in 2012, maybe. And it was kind of early days of YouTube as well. I didn't really know what I was doing. I thought I'd just throw up some music just for fun, just to have it online somewhere. And I didn't really have a name for this song either. So I just called it Fast Country Guitar, because that's what it is. It's just me playing some bluegrass style guitar, a little song I wrote, and it was fast. So I was like, if I'm on YouTube and I wanted to see this, what would I type in? All right, Fast Country Guitar. So I called my video that, which worked as, I guess, as some clickbait, because that video has now got like almost 1.5 million views now, which is, none of my other videos have done that. Somehow that one did it, the one that looks probably and sounds the worst. So I have now a series of fast country guitar songs that I do, because I guess that particular genre of guitar in YouTube is maybe it's a bit more niche and there aren't as many people doing it. And so every time I upload a fast country guitar song, that tends to get a lot of traction. So I did about maybe 4 or 5 more of those during COVID, as well as a bunch of other songs, because I like to play all styles. I do acoustic. I like to do a lot of rock stuff. And the country stuff, is more for YouTube, even though I play with a couple of country artists. But I mean, Hyper Blues, one of the ones I think we might play in a bit, is one of the ones I feel quite proud of. There's probably a bunch of other ones. Sometimes the stuff as a musician that we're the most proud of is actually the stuff that most people don't really either hear that much. And the songs that get the most attention are the ones that musicians are like, well, I wrote that in 10 minutes. I didn't even like it, but that became a big hit. So it is what it is.
So you have also played with other bands. One of the bands is one of my all-time favorites. Again, I was very lucky to see them at M3. That's Winger. So tell me about Winger. I know you've done a lot of work, still doing work with Bullet Boys. Tell me about these other artists.
Well, Winger was again another one of those similar to David Lee Roth. They kind of just I asked myself, how did I wind up in that situation? Because when I was younger, again, about probably the age of 15, 16, when I was really getting into technical guitar and finding, some new person or new band I hadn't discovered before, I think I found Winger at about that age when I was 15 or 16, which was 2005, 2006, which is absolutely not the 80s at all. So it's not like these guys are on the radio much, especially in England where we don't really have a big rock radio station. I think I found them probably through YouTube. And I remember seeing their guitar player, Red Beach, doing all the solos and the riffs to songs like 17 and Headed for a Heartbreak. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. Like, I wish I could play like that guy because he has a technique, without getting too guitarist, where he does lots of tapping, which is where you use your right hand to play notes that your left hand can't reach. So he was really good at that. And, I bought the first, 3 Winger albums and I would listen to them all the time. Fast forward 10, 15 years, started listening to other things and always, had Winger as one of my favorite bands when I was younger, but definitely not always listening to them. Anyway, it was 2022 at the start of the year. And I remember I just got an email directly from Kip Winger himself, just said Winger inquiry. And it said, hey, Jake, I got your contact from Barry Squire, who was like sort of a musician referral guy in LA who passed away recently, which is a shame. But he passed my number on to Kip, or my contact onto him, and said, and Kip was like, we need someone who can fill in for our guitar player because Red Beach plays with Whitesnake as well. So when Whitesnake would go out on the road, Red would play with them. And then I guess this might have been the first time that maybe they needed someone to take his spot because I guess maybe usually they would try not to clash. But actually, Kip said, because they have another guitar player, John Roth, who plays with Starship. And both of these guitar players would sometimes be gone. So at first he was like, we actually don't know which position we need filled. It might be John for Starship or it might be Reb. So can you record yourself playing the rhythm part and the lead guitar part for 17 and then the backing vocal as well? So Kip then sent me the isolated guitar part that Reb, recorded back in 1989 or whatever it was, 88 probably. So I could listen to it and then learn it, which was really cool, but also kind of intimidating because now I could really hear exactly what was being played. And I was going onto YouTube, like, how do I play this? And watching other people explain it. And like, okay, I have to learn this myself. I sent it back to Kip and he was like, cool, sounds great. And he said, oh, we're having a hard time finding like stuff online of you playing like rock and metal. Do you have anything you can send us, like videos? And obviously I was like, well, I'd somewhat recently come off the David Lee Roth tour. So I sent him a couple of live videos people had taken just on their phones and a couple of my own songs actually from YouTube, one of which was inspired by Winger, coincidentally. And it was one of Winger's songs which didn't make it onto an album, but it was in a movie show called a movie show. No one says that. A movie. It was from Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, which is the second Bill and Ted movie. And Winger have a song in that called Battle Stations, which is one of my favorite songs, which again wasn't on any of their albums, but it was on the soundtrack to that movie. I'd always loved that song. So during COVID, I wrote a song that was kind of like a tribute to that, and I called it Jake's Excellent Adventure. And it's a very Winger style, like 80s, big guitar riff, lots of solo. So I sent Kip that plus some live footage of David Lee Roth. And then he was like, oh, great, this is awesome. Okay, well, we'd love for you to come and watch us play a show to see how we do it. And maybe come and play a couple of songs with us so you can try out with the band. So I was like, okay, great. So about a month later, I got invited to fly out to their show. Fun enough, the same show that we did a couple of weeks back at Penn's Peak, the venue in Philadelphia, that was the show they invited me to a couple of years ago. So I went out there, watched them play, and they sent me a couple of songs to learn, one of which was Hungry from the first album, and then there was Stone Cold Killer, which is a more recent song. So I had to learn them, and then, did a quick sound check with them, all good. Later in the day, we come back, do the show. I'm standing side stage, and then Kip goes, to the crowd of like a couple of thousand people, like, do you mind if we invite a friend of ours come up? Played with David Lee Roth, blah, blah, blah. He's going to come and jam with us for a song or two. So I went and played with them on stage as my real audition in front of a crowd of people, which is always a fun way to try out with the band, in the real time situation. Did that, and obviously I guess it went well. We hung out for a bit, backstage, talked, and then after I flew back home and I just said, thanks for having me. Just let me know if you need me for any shows. And then Kip said, absolutely, we're going to need you. So and I got the list of all the dates for the rest of the year that they needed cover for until Reb was his time to come back. So that was how I got with Winger. I got referred to them, audition process, had a few stages, and then met in person, played the show, and that was that. And then after that, it was like, okay, you have a month to learn the rest of the set. We'll see you on the show because they don't rehearse. So once I did the gig, the first audition, Kip sends me 25 songs they're playing, and I also got videos of Reb himself in his bedroom like this, playing through the songs, explaining his parts, saying, "So this is how I do this, and here's my vocal." And so I got all these videos from Reb, which was great because that really helped me like learn them because these are not easy songs to play. Yeah, I had about a month, and then it was, yeah, here's the first show at the Arcada Theater in Chicago. We'll fly you out. And then the sound check was the first proper rehearsal. So it was like, hope you've done your homework kind of thing. Now, the funny thing about that is Bullet Boys were actually opening that night. So my first show with Winger, Bullet Boys were the opening band. And then fast forward a few years later, I now play with Bullet Boys. My first official gig with Bullet Boys was at the Arcada Theater as well. So there's this funny, cycle of things. And like I said, a few weeks ago, we opened for Winger as Bullet Boys, and we played at Penn's Peak, the same venue that I had my audition for. And that was the first time I'd seen the guys from Winger since I was with them. So it's funny how all these gigs and avenues sort of cross paths and go back to, your roots, so to speak. But yeah, that was my time with Winger. That's how I got in with them. And yeah, those are great guys. So, but that one for me was almost a bigger deal than the David Lee Roth one. Even though David Lee Roth is a bigger artist and we were playing arenas, with Winger, I had much more of a responsibility within the band. With David Lee Roth, it was a bigger band. There was, two guitar players, keyboards, drums, bass. He was singing. We also had click tracks so we could hear Stay in Time and a couple of backing vocals and things like that on the backing tracks. With Winger, it's all 100% live. There's no click tracks or anything, no backing vocals. It's just we are all playing and singing everything. And also because I was now covering for Reb, I had to do all the lead stuff, which was very difficult to play. So, and also, Reb in the guitar world is a known player. Half the people who probably go to watch Winger are probably going to watch Reb play guitar because of just how he plays. So when they told me like, oh, you're going to have to play his songs, I was like, okay, I have to really do my homework because these are some big shoes to fill and I want to do this correctly. As a fan myself, if I watch a band, I like to hear things played the way they are. Like that's what we guitarists go crazy for, is when the guitar player plays the iconic guitar solo that's known for being a great solo. I want to see that solo live. So if I'm going to play in his place, I have to make sure I play it properly. So it was a lot of fun, and yeah, they're all great guys. So, and we still keep in touch, which is nice. So yeah.
Wow. Well, Winger is my favorite. And when you were saying 1988, that was my time. I'm much older than you. I could still see myself jogging. I was a big runner at the time, and we were using like Walkmans. I mean, nowadays, like you don't even see things like that anymore. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, and they're retiring now. So, like you said, a lot of these bands are just going to be streamed going forward because time has come for some of them. Tell me more about Bullet Boys, because I know that you're currently playing with them, so you probably have events coming up and locations. So,
yeah, so this all kind of happened around the start of the year. Last year, actually, I stepped in just to cover for a couple of shows because I'm friends with Ira, who was their original guitar player. And, we know each other through the Hollywood jam, Whiskey A Go-Go kind of scene. So, we've known each other for years, so we're good friends. And then I think at the time, Ira, he had some European dates he needed to go and do. So he actually asked me, oh, do you want to step in for Bullet Boys? Because he knew who I play with and we got on well. So I stepped in for a couple of shows. And then around Christmas time, he left the band, and I guess the Bullet Boys, because I knew Fred the drummer from some other projects in Hollywood, so having played with them once before, and then the fact that there was an opening, I think they were like, well, we used Jake last summer, why don't we see if he's free to come and be with the band? So over Christmas they were like, well, if you want to play with us, then the job is yours, kind of thing. So it happened around then, and then we started our first show, I think was end of January. We opened for Dokken, which was great. And then, once or twice a month, we're mostly doing weekend fly dates at the moment, a day, 2 days here and there. We've been playing with Warrant quite a lot the past couple of months, which has been fun. They've been headlining. We opened for them and then some other bands. But yeah, I think the goal is to try and get, some more dates on the calendar because since the lineup change, Lonnie Miller, sorry, or should I say Lonnie Vincent, his stage name. He's back in the band now, so it's cool to have two original members in, and then myself and Fred, I guess, are sort of the newer, younger sort of people. But yeah, all the shows have been great. Everything's been going really well. I think Mark and Lonnie are very happy with it because all the players in the band play really well. So when you watch it live, it sounds great. and Mark is a great performer. That's one of the things I guess about a lot of these bands of this genre is, just because of age and everything, it can be hard to sing the songs the way they used to, and it can be hard to to perform in the way that you do when you're 18. But Mark, he's got to give him credit. He still sings everything like he used to. He still performs like a madman. He's all over the stage running around. So the shows very much feel like a high energy, fun rock band, as opposed to I'm going to watch, an old rock show kind of thing, if that makes sense. You still feel like you're getting like a cool, I guess a lot of people say it kind of takes you back to being like a young person. If you're 18 when you saw Bullet Boys or Willing or any of these bands, and you see Bullet Boys now, not much has changed. It's still the same kind of show, high energy, lots of fun. So it's going great. And we're playing again. Next show, I think, is end of July. So we've got a little bit of a gap in between. There's a new single that's going to be coming out. I'm not sure when exactly. I'm not sure how much I can say about it yet. I can probably say a few things, but there's a new single coming out with the intention of doing a whole album as well with the current lineup, and that will be a good push to probably for next year to get a lot of shows. I think it'll take some time this year to get that all finished up. And then, yeah, who knows, going forward. I think the goal is just to play more. I know Mark is very keen to get over to Europe, as am I, because it'd be nice to go back to my own country and play some shows. Because the last time I did a gig in England, it probably would have been a wedding or something like that. So to come back with with a band and play, and tour would be a lot of fun. But yeah, it's all going really well. So it's and the guys are a lot of fun to be around. Everyone's very easy. I think everyone trusts everyone's professionalism and abilities to sort of let them do their part. Sometimes on shows you have to be told to play a certain way, look a certain way. Whereas Bullet Boys is like, no, you be you, which is great. You know what, you fit the band's style and energy, which is great. So, but otherwise play and perform as you do, and bring your own sort of energy into this, which is nice, because a lot of the times when you do what I do, like session playing for other people, you're playing other people's music, you're playing how they want you to play, you have to wear what they want you to wear. So a lot of times you're kind of not suppressing, but you're not really fully letting loose what you can do. You're kind of just playing very sort of a background role, which has its purpose. So, and I will continue to do that, I'm sure, some more. But with Bullet Boys, it's nice to be like a band member, and and contribute in your own way, whether it be creatively, musically, performance wise. So it's a cool band to be in, and we have fun.
Wow. Well, you really have opened my eyes to kind of the behind the scenes part of it for preparation for joining an established band. Because a lot of guys don't talk about that. They don't talk about the homework it takes to prepare, And with the homework, it's a lot of pressure. Like you said, you're going to YouTube and you're looking at this. And then I'm sure, just like in many other professions, you're probably the hardest critic is you. You're probably, beating yourself up or something over the smallest thing that no one even noticed in the audience, right?
That's anytime any musician comes off stage, the first thing you do is, I messed up the verse or the chorus, I missed this here, I missed my lyric, I missed that drum fill, and everyone else is like, what are you talking about? You sounded great, So we're always our own harshest critics. Most people are anyway. But I think, I think that's like you got to balance that. It's good to be sort of, understand where you need to improve so you can actually work at it. But don't be so hard on yourself that you just tell yourself you suck all the time. Because, at the same time, you need to be confident in your abilities so that when you go out on stage, as an audience member, what you're seeing looks convincing. If you're always afraid or doubting your abilities, then it's how you play. It will come out. And I think that was me for a long time. I'd always hold back and think, I don't want to play too much, or this is not really the right thing to do. And which is true. There's definitely, if I'm on a quiet jazz gig, I'm not going to bring a huge Marshall amplifier and start ripping solos or everything. There are times and places when you need to apply the certain thing, but you need to be, confident in your abilities, even if you know what you need to improve upon. But yeah, the funny thing, like you said, is the behind the scenes of how people join bands. I think most of us assume when you watch a music video or a band on stage, like, oh yeah, these guys, they played together, they probably grew up together, they all wrote songs together. This is the band story, right? But when you do this for a living, you realize how often a band that might be on stage that you see, that might be the first time they're all meeting each other as on stage. Like you get told, here is the date, here is the show, here's the set list, go learn it. Here's the address. We'll see you then. This is what it pays. I'll see you on the day. And then you will just show up and then you just play together because this. Hopefully everyone's learned the songs. And then that's that. And, I guess our jobs as musicians is to disguise the fact that we've never met each other before this moment. And what you're seeing is supposed to be a fully planned, rehearsed, show. And, and that's fun. Sometimes if you're playing with great musicians, you can do that. Like it keeps it interesting. It depends on the type of gig. If you're playing, something very specific, you probably can't do that. But when it's like, just a club night, a funk jam or a blues kind of thing, or a pop, birthday party, they're kind of standard songs that everyone knows. So it's like, as long as you know the songs, maybe there's a few arrangements you have to be aware of. Yeah, you can show up on a gig and without any rehearsal and play it, and it'll sound good if the players are good. So yeah, and in terms of how people get into the bands, it is interesting. You don't really think about that too much. One thing I always remember when I was younger and I would buy like these White Snake album and this Def Leppard and that, is all these members. I'd be like, oh, that Rudy Sarzo, he used to play with him and now he's playing with that guy, and oh, that guitar player, he's now with this band, and that drummer, he's now with this band, and they all would just cross over and switch. And now I've come out here and I'm like, oh yeah, I see real time. That is exactly what happens. Like one minute he's playing with that band. Okay, now he got fired. Okay, you joined that band. Okay, now that band's gone. Join this band. Okay, so we all just have to stay busy. It's very rare actually to get a band where they have original lineup from day one till their whole career. It's a very rare thing, which is great when it happens. That's why Winger was such a cool band to sort of be in, because they are the same lineup from day one. They've got John Roth, an extra guitar player, but it's the same original four-piece as it was. Kip, Reb, Paul, and then Rod on drums, and now John's in the band, and it's the same guys. So, and that's probably one of the reasons why they sound so great. Seeing them live is, they're a very good live band. But yeah, it's funny how this whole world works. Yeah, you have to be able to learn songs quickly is a good skill. Like sometimes you might get a day's notice to learn like 20 songs. It's like, okay, well if you want to do the gig and you want to stay a pro, then this is a thing. So yeah, stay up all night, study the music, headphones on, and then the next day go off and do the show. And if you can do that, then it opens up a huge door that may let you get you a whole tour. So it definitely, there are times when you have to really do like focused work, like, okay, I've got to isolate myself for the next few days and just finish this recording, whatever it may be. Hopefully it pays off. Sometimes like I did all that work for one show and that was the end of it. And never get called back again. But
I want to compliment you because throughout this conversation, I really can see how strong of an instructor you are. And I know that you said that you do education for guitar and do lessons and do kind of demonstrations on, but from your conversation, not just, you put your fingers here and this is how you strum it and whatever, your conversation about who you are as a person, how you present yourself, that's all wrapped into your guitar lessons. I mean, they have to really create a personality, know the kind of music they really want to play, because if they're forced to do something, like you said, that they don't like, they're gonna quit,
I've been in that position with kids, trying to sort of get them inspired, like, hey, this is a riff that I loved when I was younger, like, yeah, it's not working with them, it's not going to work, okay, change plan. But no, you're absolutely right. I think there's different levels to being a musician as with any profession, and the further you sort of go up the ranks of learning more, well, number one, you realize just how much more there is still to learn and how many incredible players there are out there. So, even if you get better as a player, it's quite humbling to be like, oh yeah, there's some kid on Instagram who's like 12 years old who's playing, some technical thing that blows my mind. So it's like, okay, at least, whatever, I can relax a bit, like just me, I'll be me, let that be that. That's why teachers, I say, are so important, in any, all throughout life. Education is the key. And, music especially, you've probably heard the saying that music is a language. And it really is. It's not a language like we're speaking now, where I say hello and we have a conversation. Music is, it's like an unspoken language where the sounds that we create through your instrument can directly make you feel an emotion. So whenever I teach people, I try to say like, look, yeah, these are scales and chords and here's the theory, but before you learn to play an instrument, if you like a song, you might not even know why. You just like the way the intro sounds. And like, well, what's going on in the intro? It's a piano, or is it guitar? Is there a drum groove? Is it a rock song? Is it pop? Whatever it is. And as musicians, our goal is to try and really understand what these sounds, how they make you feel, so that when we write a song and perform, we can play those sounds to get you to feel that thing, if that makes sense. Because sometimes I think what happens to a lot of musicians is when they get good, they get quite technical and in their head, and they start writing music that is fun to play and is challenging, and musicians like it. But to the rest of the world who aren't musicians, who don't speak the language in the way that we do from a technical point of view, it goes over their head, because like to them it's just sounds, noises. The technical ability of it doesn't impact how much they will enjoy it. Whereas musicians, like I can watch like a really flashy guitar player and be like, wow, that was great, even if it doesn't sound that appealing, to a non-musician. So I always try to think, okay, well, I'm not playing just to musicians, I'm playing to everybody. So whatever I do has to sort of mean something to them. So if I have a solo, I don't just want to play as fast as possible with scales, as fun as that may be. My goal is not to show off. The goal is to try and, you know, get them to cheer or sing along or something like that. So, you know, when I'm teaching people and I play like a chord, you know, and I can say, oh, well, this is a major 7 chord. Okay, well, what does that mean? Well, how does it make you feel? What does that sound like to you? Does it sound happy? Does it sound sad? You know, and different types of chords can pull out different types of emotions. So I try to sort of play the sounds I'm playing and from a theoretical point of view, and then say, well, this to me sounds like I'm playing like a dreamy kind of scale, or this is like a, you know, kind of uncertain. And when you really understand that, you can then as a songwriter go, well, if I want to write a song about, you know, an old friend or something, I can think of chords that maybe can put you in that mindset before any lyrics have been written. I can play a couple of chords on the guitar that have a sort of maybe a somber feeling to you, and that way, if you're a lyricist, you're going to be more inspired to write lyrics because the music has led you there. I think in musicians, we have to really understand that, yeah, this is a language, and, you know, a great example is you can put 2 people who speak completely different languages and put them in the same room. As long as they can play an instrument, they'll be able to play together without even talking. Like, oh, you're playing that? Okay, I can hear what you're playing. I'll follow along and jam, and, you know, and so it really is just a different type of language. And, you know, there's a science behind it, but it's also a very emotive thing and a personal thing. So as a teacher, I guess that's an important role to sort of try to instill, is it's not just technical, it's not just scales and chords. This is a whole, you know, way of, you know, obviously it's very fun to do, but you can do a lot with it that you can really impact people on an emotional level if you can understand it. And it is hard to do because if I sell someone like, I like this, straight away someone will hear those words and go, that means something. Whereas if I'm playing something, to try and play something and then make you feel a certain way requires a lot of, you know, skill and finesse, because sometimes it's not just what you play, it's how you play it. You know, that's another big thing. You can have the same piece of music played by 5 different guitar players and it'll sound different because they'll all have their own way of playing and their own personalities. And I think that's, you know, one of the big goals as a musician, is to have your personality be heard through your instrument. So most people can probably hear, like, you know, when Jimi Hendrix plays versus when Jimmy Page plays versus when, you know, Slash plays, or, you know, these iconic guitar players have distinctive sounds which is tied to their personality. And it makes sense, like when you hear them speak in an interview, like, oh, the way you play is kind of matching your personality. You know, like drummers who are like very frantic and high energy, okay, well, it makes sense that you play drums because you can't sit still, you know. And singers who are very confident and, you know, and well spoken and charming, well, it makes sense that you'll be on the front of the stage, on the front of the band, talking to thousands of people a night because it's who you are. And then, you know, bass players are oftentimes can be the quieter ones because they don't necessarily want to be in the spotlight, but they contribute probably one of the most important roles of the band, you know, holding down not just rhythm and timing, but, you know, melody and harmony as well. So a lot of bass players can be quite quiet people who are very smart and intelligent, and it makes sense that they would choose to play bass. And then guitar players are a big mess. So it's funny how these things, you know, really do mean stuff when you actually break it down.
Wow. Well, thank you so much. I cannot thank you enough for this interview. This has been amazing. I would like you to plug your social media, your website, your YouTube page, because we're going to roll out with Hyper Blues.
Great. Yes. Well, yeah, if you want to find me, YouTube, just type Jake Faun into YouTube, you'll find me. Instagram is just Jake Faun Music, JakeFaun Music. You should find me on there. Facebook, if you want to add me, it's just my name, Jake Faun. I don't have a website. I used to have it, and then I realized nothing was really coming from it, so I just started using Instagram and YouTube, and that's kind of done me well. But yeah, website probably would be help. But yeah, I'm pretty findable, I guess. If you just search for my name, you can find me wherever I'll be.
Very cool. Well, thank you again for being on the show. We're going to roll out with Hyper Blues.
Been a pleasure.
Thank you. been listening to Bringing the Darkness to the Light with Catherine Nadal, professional psychic medium, Dream Central Station, LLC. My audio editor is Al Hemberger at the Loft Recording Studios in Bronxville, New York. This is WNEW 102.7 FM radio.